It's Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in the Los Angeles area, just outside of Culver City, and we're joined by the mayor of Culver City. His name is Jim Clarke. And let's talk about Los Angeles as an example. We recently had an election in Los Angeles, an off-year election, and there was a measure on the ballot, Measure M, to tax the sale of marijuana.
Correct.
It passed, and this is on the heels of California voters passing Prop 64, legalizing marijuana. So what we have now, if you'll indulge me, for marijuana there's a 15% excise tax, state, a cultivation tax on the flowers and leaves, state, a sales tax, state, and now we have city and county taxes in LA, Measure M. Sure. A lot of taxes for marijuana, sir.
Right. I think people feel that there's a financial advantage from taxation purposes for marijuana. Now,
I understand that, but let me push, if I may. Surely governments can make some extra revenue as a result of marijuana sales. They do with cigarettes or alcohol. Sure. But with all these layers of taxes, at a certain point, the black market becomes attractive again.
Sure, exactly. Yeah.
And so are we hitting that point? We don't know yet,
well, we don't,
empirically, but are you concerned?
We don't, sure. But I mean, we're way far away from that. First of all, any kind of a tax requires a vote of our citizens as well. And so we're looking at an April 2018 is our next municipal election. So if we were going to even put something on the ballot, that's when we put it on the ballot. So we're working our way backwards. Actually, we've created a task force in Culver City made up of our various departments, members of City Council, Planning Commission, our Finance Advisory Committee, for the purposes of really seeing whether we even want to get in the business, whether it's retail, cultivation, testing, manufacturing.
Do you have any medical marijuana clinics?
No.
Facilities?
No, we've not.
You have no?
We've had none.
Okay.
We've had a ban, in part because the nature and the layout of Culver City is such that in a lot of places you can go 2 or 3 blocks and you're in Los Angeles, and so it wasn't a real handicap for people to do that. Okay,
so you do have the land use authority to decide whether you want to have a recreational retail facility. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we found that it's a very, very complex issue. I mean, to get into it, in particularly the zoning issues, the taxation issues, the appropriate locations, the siting of locations, and everything. It's still a cash business, so if you do a retail, then you've got issues of security, you've got deliver all of those kinds of things. So that's why we created this task force between now and when the state law basically goes into effect in January 2018. For us to try to make a decision, do we want to be in this business? And if we do, what aspects of it do we want to be in? Do we want to be retail? Do we want to have manufacturing? Do we want to have?
Because I can envision, since you already know what the city of LA is, how it's taxing, you could undercut them.
Sure.
And Culver City is surrounded by Los Angeles.
Our largest suburb.
Exactly. LA, the suburb of Culver City. But it's really a valid point. I mean, you think about the minimum wage wars that we had.
But I think that also goes into, somewhat like when we increased our sales tax and people were saying, oh, people are going to go leave Culver City to go shop.
Right.
We didn't see a decline in it. So I don't know that somebody's going to go out of their way because somebody else charges an extra, nickel or something like that.
But let's talk about the driving element, because what we do know is what we don't know a lot about how marijuana impacts driving.
Yeah.
I mean, when people are drunk, it's very clear what happens. When people are under the influence of marijuana, I mean, mostly they fall asleep because they ate too much. But be that as it may, how does Culver City, who has its own police department, handle this issue of driving while stoned?
Well, that's one of the things we have to look at. And I think what we'd look at are places like Colorado and Washington where they will have had experience with respect to how they're dealing with it and learn from that. But that's another factor to take into consideration, the safety issues, the law enforcement issues. So it's not just here's a cash cow out there and that we're going to go milk, but instead all of these other aspects that we wanted.
I want to talk also about your police department in a different context, and it deals with the question of immigration. What we know is that the federal government, under the new administration, has been very aggressive as it relates to its desire to have local governments cooperate with immigration agents. We know that both candidate Trump and President Trump has threatened to withdraw federal funding from entities that do not cooperate. We've now gotten into a debate as to At what point are you deemed a non-cooperator? Is it because you've called yourself a sanctuary city or a safe haven or a welcoming city? Right. What's happening in Culver City on this
Well,
front?
we've always had a policy of non-cooperation in the sense of we don't go out of our way. Our police officers are not deputized as ICE enforcement officers. That's been our policy all along. We're not changing that particular policy.
But
in
are
fact,
you
we've even published that policy on our website so that people understand. We're holding a community meeting coming up shortly in which the police department is going to explain to the public what it is that we do and do not do. We would not turn over anyone to ICE unless there was a proper court authority issued or a warrant for that. So, I mean, we're going to comply with the law. We're not going to have police officers standing in the doorway blocking ICE agents. We're not going to be doing that. But we're not becoming deputized as ICE agents or in just arbitrarily turning people over. When we stop people, we're not asking for any kind of proof of citizenship or that when we detain someone.
I guess what I'm wondering is, in that you're not playing an active role in helping the federal government find the undocumented, it would seem to me that given the rhetoric of this administration, you're not on their team. You're not playing by their rules. I mean, they've talked about deportations for folks that have even been charged with a crime or maybe charged with a crime. And so
we're not going to be there.
Okay, so, and I hear you.
And if they want to come for Culver City, I think there's a lot of other places that they're going to go first.
Well, that's fair. But look, how far do you push this? For example, I think it was Miami-Dade. I'll just use this term, they were kind of rolled over on this. They said, we're not a sanctuary city anymore, and they were afraid of losing federal funds. If the new administration follows through with this threat of withdrawing federal funds, if you don't cooperate, we don't know what that means. How far do you push it?
Well, we've also looked at that issue, and I've asked our city manager and others to look at what we get in federal funding and where those impacts would be, and it's mostly in our transportation area, which could be fairly significant because our fare box return is only 18 to 20%.
Fare box meaning?
How much money we actually get from passengers.
I see.
And so we were dependent upon state and federal funds for 80% of the operation of our transit. And the transit is what...
Oh, I see.
And we carry 6 million passengers a year in Culver City, which is amazing. But it's also that connection to the expo that gets people onto public transit. So I am concerned about that. But the reality of it is that we're not acting in any way. Where we draw the line is we will observe the law.
Right, but one could argue the law says if you're undocumented, you shouldn't be here. And
but I mean, it's going to require a proper court order for us if we're to take, and we really don't. I've talked to our police chief, and in his 37 years in the police force, there's not been one incident in 37 years where anybody from ICE has asked us to turn somebody over.
These are different times.
I understand.
These are different times, and there's a lot of aggressive enforcement of our immigration laws. And when we see the DACA kids have been picked up, folks with the most minor of offenses, the new administration wants to hire tens of thousands of new agents. And so are you getting ready for this? The possibility that you
like I said, we're educating, and I was just on a conference call with 40 other mayors from around the country, and coming up very shortly will be basically an immigrant rights day across the country in which to educate people. I think that first of all, to educate people about what their rights are.
His name is Jim Clarke. He is the mayor of the city of Culver City. My name is Brad Pomerance. We're coming to you from the Los Angeles area on Local Edition.